You're used to your job rating you, performance reviews, manager feedback, one-on-one meetings. Well, today we flipped the script, and we're going to help you rate your job. That's right, we're going to show them who's in charge.
Let's get into it. So, Kyle, today we're rating our job.
That's right.
Pretty exciting stuff. I'm going to do a softball for you.
Yes.
How would you rate your current job?
Oh, my current job at Morning Brew?
Yeah.
The company that pays for us to do this podcast?
Correct.
And in which all of my colleagues listen to?
Yes.
Yeah, just want me to rate it in front of everyone? Mm-hmm. No, I'm happily will rate my job. It's a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
I do love my job at Morning Brew. We've both been here for 4.5 years. So if we didn't like our jobs,
that would be kind of messed up.
At that point, it's on us.
Yeah.
What are you doing sticking around here for so long?
You're right.
So I'm at a solid 9 out of 10. There's always a little room for improvement, but things are going quite well.
Yeah.
Same question back to you.
Like a 3? No, I'm just, can you imagine? I'd say I'm at like an 8.5.
Sorry, I'm doing better than you.
Yeah. I would say better than an 8. Not as great as a 9. Like
that
9
is where 8.5 sits.
True. 9 to me is like basically a 10. Like you can't give somebody a 10.
Kaila, you're just describing where numbers are.
Nobody like mentally, in terms of rating a job. But like this is just based off of vibes right now.
Yeah.
Like 8.5, 9, whatever. I'm just giving a number.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's walk me through when you do your vibe calculation in your head. Like, how do you land at 8.5? What's working? What's not? Like, how do you get to that feeling of this is an 8.5 out of 10?
Right. So obviously we're teeing up the fact that we have like a more scientific way, but like how I would have approached this before our fun scientific template way.
Yes.
Is like, I am excited to get up in the morning. I don't really have Sunday scaries. Like I'd say one Sunday out of the month.
Yeah, that's a good 25% is a low Sunday scary.
It's a low Sunday scary. I'm like happy to show up at work. I feel relatively fulfilled. Mm-hmm. Like I have enough, like I feel confident in my standing where if I'm done at 4:00 for the day, I will sign off and I'm not like trying to prove myself still going above and beyond. I'm going above and beyond because I want to.
Yeah. And you don't feel like someone's going to micromanage you and be like, saw you go off green on Slack at 4:59.
Right.
You're fired.
Right. Like I feel trusted and I trust everyone else.
Okay.
So I don't have this like anxiety around work, which I think is where in the past would have eroded my rating. What about you?
Well, I said I'm a 9. The anxiety thing is interesting. Like, we'll come back to that. But yeah, I think when I think of a job kind of in my own words, how I'm getting to a 9, 1, I generally like what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the tasks that I have to do, I find enjoyment in. 2, I think like opportunity to learn a lot. And particularly with, the podcast, with our like full-time roles, like I'm doing a lot of different things. And so I feel like I'm learning a lot. Manager is super important, and reporting to Robert, who's been in media a long time, I'm learning a ton from him. So I think those are like the first things I think about. The only other factor that I do really like is, and this is like a little vain maybe, but working for a company that people know. Mm-hmm. It's quite fun. Like it's a cool feeling when you're hanging with friends or at a party and someone's like, what do you do? And you're like, I work for Morning Brew. And they're like, oh my God, I love Morning Brew. And everyone is convinced they're like best friends with Alex Lieberman.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew Alex in 3rd grade. And so that is a cool feeling. So that's how I'm getting to a 9, approximately.
I like that. So do you think there's anything that could change to take it to a 9.5 or a 10?
Oh, that's a good point. I would say I would never give a job a 10 because it always feels like there is something that you can improve. One element that would bring this up more, I would say because of the nature of my role, chief of staff, I don't really have a team. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't have direct reports. I don't have like a little pod of people that are all, working on chief of staff stuff. We have another chief of staff, Jacqueline, who's probably like my closest colleague, but we're kind of focused on different elements of the business. So I would say that's the one downside. As someone who grew up like playing team sports, when we were all on Morning Brew learning, it felt like we had this really close clique of people that was really enjoyable. So that's the one downside is don't have a team. There's some pros to that, which is like you don't really have to worry about anyone else. You're not managing people, which is, can be really, really rewarding, but also take up a lot of time. So there's pros and cons there, but I would say that's the one downside. What would take you from an 8.5 to a 9?
I think actually it's the same.
Okay.
So I think we're in similar spots, just kind of on different floors of the office, different divisions,
And quite literally different floors.
yeah,
for
no,
those. We
literally.
have a floor 4.
And a floor 3, and
Yes.
I'm on 3, and he's on 4.
I'm on 4.
It's very
one higher.
divisive.
Yeah.
I used to be on 4, but then
You were demoted.
I got to go to the cooler floor.
You had to walk all your stuff down. Everyone on floor 4 is like, boo!
It's true. I actually did move my desk from floor 4 to floor 3, like on a Friday afternoon when nobody could was around.
Yeah.
So I was like, it looks like I'm like quitting.
It's like
it
the
looks
office, like walk of shame.
no, it
literally.
actually looks like it was. And I was like, but I'm excited to be on 3.
Yeah.
I think 3 is a cooler floor.
3 is objectively
The cooler floor.
It's all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
creators. Yeah.
Yeah, it's way more fun. Anyways, I think that I really love the fact that I'm doing a million different things. There's no day feels like the day before or what the next day is going to look like. I just I have, one person on my team who I have a meeting with every day. But we don't really talk beyond that 30-minute meeting. So
Yeah.
I think having a team where we're all kind of shooting for the same goals, having the same experiences, like running into the same problems, I think would be really lovely.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that's kind of a double-edged sword because as a manager, if you have the great team, it can bring you up to a 9.5 from an 8.5. It could also bring you down to a 4.
Yeah. You have
if you have a tough situation.
yeah, 100%. Great call out.
So I think that basically the stability that I currently have and all of the elements that we're about to talk about that make a job great,
Yeah.
I feel really confident in. And I think the things that I would need to change to make it a 9 or a 9.5, it's like that also adds some volatility and some risk into the day-to-day.
Yeah, it's a great breakdown. And so now let's pivot to the template.
Yeah.
So what we did, we went in the lab, aka Google
cooked.
Sheets,
Yeah.
and we cooked. And we made the per my last email rate your job template. And by we, I mainly mean Kayla. I provided some oversight. I maybe hit some keys.
No, yeah,
I'm
you
kind
had
of
some
the
good-
ideas guy. Kind of the ideas guy here.
You get some good thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why we wanted to do this is you heard in our conversation, I think you, the listener, like most people can articulate a general score, a general
Yeah.
feeling of how much they like their job. And then if you ask them why, it's a little ephemeral, like, oh, it's kind of this, it's kind of that. What we thought would be really helpful and what we've seen be really helpful in our careers is actually getting a little more specific in deciding the top, 5, 6 factors that go into what makes a job enjoyable. Then how much weight do you put into different of those different factors throughout your career, and finding some sort of concrete way to actually get a little more tactical and detailed in how you're rating your job. So that's what we made in Google
Yeah.
Sheets, and we can walk through the actual template. So I'll throw it over to you, Kayla.
Yeah. So I think there's an important element here that we need to kind of think about. First is that when you're talking about your performance reviews, how you're getting evaluated, something that we've always said, a good performance review is very it explains clearly what your expectations are and how you're meeting or exceeding those expectations. And so why not create a template that does the same for your job?
That's right, job. We're rating you now.
We're rating you.
Yeah.
So for those listening, not on YouTube, we've just put up the blanket rate your job template. It looks very boring, right? There's factor 1 through factor 6.
Yep.
This is the factors that make up your job, or these are things that are important for you to have a good job. And then options A through D. So let's go to the example.
Yep.
Because this is kind of confusing. So let's say you're looking at choosing an offer.
Yep.
Right? This is the most I think obvious way that you can use this template.
Yep.
First, I'd like to note that we have identified 6 different elements that we think are the most important for your job.
Yep. So as you're sitting down and saying, do I like my job?
Yep.
We're providing 6 things that you should be thinking about that we believe factor into your overall feeling of, do you like the job or not?
So should we go through those first?
Let's go through those.
Okay. So first we have total comp. This one is pretty obvious.
Yeah. Dollar bills, y'all.
But it's not just salary, right? It's your base pay or maybe your hourly wage, but it's bonuses, it's benefits, it's time off.
That 401k.
401k match, everything that goes into how you are compensated for your job.
Yep.
And then there's flexibility. Are you able to work from home? Just like I was saying, like what rates Morning Brew high for me is I feel confident signing off at 4:30 if I feel like I've done my work for the day.
Yep.
Granted, sometimes I have to work till 6, 7, 8.
Yep.
But I feel like there's some flexibility. I can choose how I'm structuring my day.
And just one note about flexibility. We're not saying for this rating that, oh, if you're remote and you have full flexibility, that's a 10. And if you're in office, that's a 1. It's flexibility based on what you want.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a parent and flexibility means I like to be in the office, but if I need to dip out at 3, I can, and that's accepted. So flexibility as you define it.
Yeah. Next is the firm brand. So this is kind of like, maybe it's a little divisive here and we can talk about this, but firm brand is the reputation.
The prestige.
The prestige. When Kyle was talking about, it's great to say I work at Morning Brew and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I love Morning Brew. Like that actually does mean something and not just like the clout.
Not just at parties.
Yeah, but also when you're thinking about your next step in your career, that name recognition goes a long way in potentially giving you a leg up that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Correct.
And again, in the template, you can change this out if you disagree with this take, but this is something that we've kind of assessed as one of the 6 elements.
Yep.
Next is manager and team.
Yeah.
So how great is your manager?
And this might be a situation where both me and Kayla, we talked about this. This might be a little lower for us. Not that, I mean, I love my manager, but I don't have a team. So maybe you just don't have a team and that's something you really want. And that would lower your rating of your overall job.
Right. Next is impact of role. Again, this is one that we have deemed important. How, when you do something, like how much of an impact does it have on your work, your team, your company? If you have a lot of agency within your job, I think that can be a really great element of your role.
And there's another layer of impact too. I think you could interpret it in either way or both ways, which is impact of your role could be like what you're saying, Kayla, where do I feel like the work I'm doing impacts the business? Like I'm not just sitting around pressing keys and no one gives a shit. I'm actually moving the business forward. Impact of role could also be like, say you work for a nonprofit.
Right.
And you feel like the work I'm doing is net positive to society. I'm making a positive impact and that feels really good to me. So again, just identifying that could have 2 interpretations.
And finally is learning opportunities. If you feel, everything else is amazing, but you're stuck in this role.
Yeah, you're not growing.
You're not growing and there's no opportunities for you to grow. This could be learning and development opportunities within the company, trainings that actually are beneficial and move your skills and experience forward. This could also be, getting challenging tasks as a part of your role that make you feel like you're growing and learning. So those are the 6 elements: total comp, flexibility, brand, team, impact of role, and learning ops.
Yep. And then under that is importance. And I think this is a really important part, no pun intended, to this template. So if you disagree with the 6 categories we have, you could put in your own. You'd be wrong because these are the 6, but you could put in your own. But what you want to do is importance. And this could change throughout your career, but you want to rate them 1, least important to you, 10, most important to you. And this basically creates a weighted system. So on the screen, we have comp as a 10, meaning at this part in your career, your total compensation is very important to you. And you could have comp, though, maybe early in your career, you're like, I don't care about my comp, I just want learning opportunities. That might be a 2. So then when you go to rate your job, if the importance is high, it's going to have a higher weight.
Right.
If the importance is low, it doesn't really matter, and it'll come out in your net score.
Yes. So in this example, we have 4 different offers. This person is swimming in opportunities.
Huge.
And I like to think about the importance. This is basically, it's functionally a decision matrix.
Yep.
So you are tasked with a decision, and we've made it like both for externally choosing what your next step should be and also internally how to improve your relationship with your job.
Yep.
So this is the external one. And again, if you're listening, you don't see the graphic on the screen. We have the template linked in the show notes, so you can just click into that. It'll automatically make a copy, and that's your Google Sheet. You can look at it as well. So let's say this person has 4 different options. It seems I created this random person that they are maybe a lawyer and they have 4 options. First is in-house counsel at a beauty company. So then they've gone through and they've rated
across those 6
factors how that potential offer feels to them. So maybe it's a lower comp. So this person gave it a 6 out of 10. Maybe flexibility is higher comparatively. If you're in-house counsel, you're not working big law hours, you know? The brand is good. The team is good. Basically, they've gone through and they've rated all of this. And they've done that basically out of a 1 to 10 scale. Ignore the importance at this point. The importance thing is going to come out in the rating. You don't need to think about it when you're doing that. Then she has 3 other options: chief of staff, big law associate, nonprofit counsel.
I mean, she should take chief of staff, obviously. It's a great role. And so once you've put in all of your, you've rated all your factors across these 4 different job opportunities, a net rating pops out.
Yeah.
And you can see the in-house counsel at a beauty company, for example, is an 8.1. And what I think, again, just to call out is the in-house counsel, if you just look at comp, is a 6. If you look at big law associate, it's a 10. But based on the importance that this person has put into these factors, big law only comes out as a 6.5 net rating, and in-house counsel comes out at 8.1.
Right.
So this helps you gain clarity on which offer makes the most sense based on what your you think is the most important.
Yeah. And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show. So moving away from the template for a minute.
Yep.
Because I want to talk about this, but I want to talk about the rating your actual job next. But
Yeah.
I think this is important because I actually used this when I was looking at my next step before Morning Brew.
Yeah.
So I created this for myself, and I basically had 3 options, which was stay at my current role, go to Morning Brew, and then also I had an opportunity to basically be the content person for a private equity fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, or you could have sold all your belongings and moved to Cancun.
Sure. There's always a 4th option.
Yeah.
there's always a plan Z. And I was convinced that the private equity firm was going to be the right next step for me because it was bananas compensation.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean,
bananas.
I mean, rolling up a bunch of HVAC companies too, like, whew, if that doesn't get you up in the morning, I don't know what does.
So I had been through these. I was in the middle of both of these, and I was really like, what am I going to do? So I weighted my importance of all of these factors. I didn't have this exactly. It wasn't like these 6, but it was something similar. I weighted the importance, and then I rated kind of my expectations for quality of life and compensation, and the private equity fund was a 10 out of 10 in compensation. Morning Brew, it was like a 7 out of 10,
Yeah.
whatever.
All right. You're flexing on us.
No,
we get it.
It was a lot. But the thing is, every other element was lower than Morning Brew.
Yep.
And so when the rating popped out, again, it's a very simple like math concept. It's just a weighted average. But I was like, oh, like the private equity firm is way lower in terms of everything that matters to me.
Yeah.
And so it was very obvious that Morning Brew was the right next step. And I actually didn't even finish the interview process with the private equity firm. I had already gotten Morning Brew, and I called them and I said, I'm not going to continue. Because, if I had just looked at the number, I would have seriously considered, going to that.
Oh, yeah. And then we had a Zoom call, and you were like, I've made the worst choice of my life.
Exactly.
And you tried to go back to the PE fund, and they said, sorry.
100%.
I dropped you.
Yeah.
No, I think this is a perfect illustrative example of one, like getting clarity. And I think what this forces you to do is actually to write down what is important to me and how important are those factors. And so if you just said, oh, there's equal weight across the board, maybe you picked the PE fund because the comp is so high. But at that point in your life, you were like, yeah, the comp is nice, don't get me wrong, but there's other things that are more important.
Yeah.
And Morning Brew is scoring higher in all of those things. I'm going to go to Morning Brew. And if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have a podcast right now.
You're so right. I mean, I might, but.
Yeah, that's true. You might have a PE. Yeah, sorry to assume. You want to be a podcast star. I love that example. Do we want to talk about how you can use this now to, if you're not, trying to find another job, how can you use this to rate your job and improve the job you have?
Yeah, so this is basically exactly what we were talking about before, which is how do I go from an 8.5 to a 9? Or how do I go from a 9 to a 9.5? And if we can pull up the final example.
Yes.
So this is the example template that we've created on rating your existing job. You're not trying to find another job, but you were just like, I want to improve my life a little bit, potentially.
And what I think is so important about this is it's actually kind of hard.
Yeah.
Like when you were like, what would you do to improve your job at Morning Brew? I knew that question was coming. We did prep and I still was like, I don't know, because it's really hard. Like, okay, what categories matter to me? And like, okay, but that category is already high. So if I improve it, it actually doesn't really help that much. So again, clarity is so key here. So I just wanted to set that up. Like this is really important and can drive really important outcomes for your career.
Yeah, 100%. So in this example, again, you can take a look in the show notes. We have this same example is on the Google Sheet. You want to rate your existing job. It's the same exact process. You've already put in your importance and you've put in your goal rating. You don't have to do this, but basically this is saying, I want to get to a 9. So I want to, I want to feel so good about my job that it's a 9 out of 10. What is it currently? Well, in this situation, again, this is made up. I put, let's say, current rating, total comp is at a 6, flexibility is at an 8. I'm pretty good on the brand and the team, but the impact of role and the learning ops are a little low. Those are both at 8. When you add all that up, you get a rating of 7.9. So basically what you're asking is, how do I get from a 7.9 to a 9? And then there's this final row. We're calling it the test rating. Consider it like a sandbox environment,
Ooh,
as Kyle
okay.
mentioned.
Shout out to all my developers out there.
It's a place where you can kind of test around. The way that I viewed it when I was creating this example is what could I change a little bit to make the biggest impact on my rating? So I kind of messed around with what would happen if my firm brand, increased. What if it went from a 9 to a 10? Well, it's not that important to me in the grand scheme of things. It wouldn't make a huge difference in my rating.
Exactly.
And so what I ended up finding was if I changed the comp in this example from a 6 to an 8, I go from a 7.9 to an 8.3.
Yeah.
That gets me a lot closer to my 9.0 goal. So now I have that in my brain. I just need to increase my perception or my actual total comp.
Yep.
And I'll have a better relationship with my job. What can I do next to improve that? That's having a conversation with my manager. That's asking for additional PTO, asking for higher match on my 401k, or asking what it would take to get a raise. And so thinking through the different elements and how you can change those can actually have a really big impact on your day-to-day.
100%. And might I add, I think it would be appropriate. You don't need to show your boss this literal template.
For sure.
But saying, hey, I was evaluating what's important to me in this role. And compensation at this point in my career is really, really important. And right now I'm paid X and the market value is Y. And that gap is causing some stress in my life. That's what I want to focus on. I think just bringing a layer of, again, clarity to that conversation can be very, very helpful. Also, this tells you the next step that you need to take in your career. The one caveat I want to say is, and why I think this is important to do every 6 months, every year, is say, let's take your example of the PE fund and Morning Brew. Morning Brew had less comp, but that wasn't super important to you when you took the job.
Yeah.
Fast forward 4 years, the importance can change across all of these factors. You're older. Now you need a Ferrari. Okay, you move to New York and you're addicted to caviar and you're like, okay, keep it coming. Now compensation is more important to you. And so what had a low score but wasn't hurting your net rating because it wasn't important is now important and is dragging down that net rating. Okay, now it's time to have a conversation with your manager. So I just think it's important to understand that the importance of these factors can change and likely will change throughout your career. And to continuously do this, again, 6 months and a year is really, really helpful for your career.
Well, it's the same thing as the performance review. If you are, constantly checking yourself against these goals, sometimes those goals change. And you need to have the conversation with your manager when it's you who's meeting or missing or changing those goals.
Yes.
So you should be having that conversation with yourself and your manager as well when those things change. And it makes sense, obviously, when we're talking about compensation, but I think it's helpful to play this out in a similar example when compensation isn't the one that's the most important.
Yep.
So, for example, earlier in your career, you're probably optimizing for learning opportunities. You want to grow quickly and you're maybe willing to take a lower compensation in order to but in order to grow a lot, and then the compensation will follow.
Yep.
In this line of thinking. But if you feel like you're learned out, you've done enough.
There's nothing more for you to learn.
Exactly. You're the expert. You've done your 10,000 hours at job or whatever, and you're good to go. But I think that you can say, okay, learning opportunities are no longer as important. I feel really confident in this role. What I want to do now is I want to make an impact. And so for me, what's important is not necessarily continuing to learn, but it's using those skills that I've gathered and changing the course of a company, right? Or changing the course of a community.
Yep.
I want to have high impact. And so having that conversation with your manager hey, I've been optimizing for learning. Now I want to optimize for impact. How can I gather more high impact opportunities in the next 6 months? Again, this isn't comp necessarily. You don't have to have a comp conversation every 6 months.
Yep.
But this is saying I want to be more fulfilled, and I think I can do that by having a higher impact.
It's such a good point. So we have put this template in the show notes
Yes.
for you all. So what I would love is literally go to the show notes, click on the template, make a copy, use this in your own career, your own job, and then also let us know what you think about the template,
Yep.
how you've used it, how it helped you get a compensation increase, because that helps us sleep at night. So please write in, per my last email, at morningbrew.com,
Yes.
how you're using the template, what you like about the template. We went into the lab, we cooked for you, so tell us how you love it.
And it's free. We just did this out of the goodness of our hearts.
It's true, it is free. So yeah, it is free. So we're going to give you this. What you can give us is a 5-star rating.
Oh, love that.
That seems fair.
That seems so fair.
That seems like actually a great trade.
So I have one question for you.
Okay.
Worst job. How would you rate your worst job ever?
My worst job was when I was working at the Housing Authority for the city of Milwaukee, which now saying out loud sounds horrible. Sounds like I don't care about housing. But, the reason was I was in grad school. The comp was terrible because it was part of this broader program. But I think the real thing that was dragging down the score was manager team. I liked my manager, but I wasn't really part of a broader team. And then impact. It did feel like societally, like obviously the Housing Authority had a great mission, but I just did not feel like my work was really contributing or making a difference. And that kind of got me down.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like that. So that was probably the worst job. If I had to go back and improve it, I would probably focus on the team, like getting more involved across the broader organization and just impact. Like, can I do something that I feel like is actually worthwhile and not like drafting a newsletter that goes out to 6 people and no one reads it on MailChimp? Like, please, for the love of God, don't make me do that.
Yeah.
What about you?
So I have a very different experience. My worst job was my first job in finance.
Yeah.
And
Because you met your husband.
yeah,
Terrible.
That's what made it the worst. No, because I think it was fascinating for me, and it was that relationship with why do I hate this job so much made me choose a certain path in life, or made me optimize for different things. To explain. Relatively speaking, coming out of college, I had a pretty high salary. I was living in Florida. We had pretty low cost of living.
You were making $6.8 million a year.
Exactly. And so the comp was relatively high. I'd give that an 8. However, pretty much everything else was extremely low. So flexibility, I think 0 is too generous. Like 12-hour days, like on a good day. I lived 3 blocks away from the beach. I went to the beach like maybe twice in a year.
Which is like, then just don't even live by the beach at all.
It's like, why
sadder.
am I paying a premium? Why is there sand on my floors that I'm sweeping off every day? And I can't even experience it myself. So that was really tough. Flexibility was functionally 0. Firm brand was higher then. Deutsche Bank was pretty good now.
Yeah, they've had some press.
They had some negative press.
Yeah.
I would say it's not as good now, but I'd say I would give it an 8. But then my manager was really hard on me. I liked him as a person, but he was really, really hard on me. And I felt like I couldn't do anything right. Impact, I felt like it was, again, maybe a 1.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't.
Well, you were helping oligarchs stash their money in London, so.
No, that wasn't me. Let's not start that rumor. But I was like, doing manual data entry, stuff that like functionally AI can and should be doing. Like I was like spending 12 hours a day, like spinning my wheels, so exhausted, and doing stuff that I didn't feel like even moved the needle for our team, And so impact is, again, in both senses of the word, I had very little impact. And I learned a ton about a very specific thing, which is like Latin American financials.
That is kind of cool.
It's super cool
Yeah.
and something I've never used again. So I give that a 3. So again, it's like the compensation was something I was really excited about moving into. That's my first job.
Yeah.
Like that was huge for me. And then I was like, wait, this isn't everything. The quality of my life is so low right now that even if I found the stuff interesting, which I ultimately did, and I had like a good team, like the people around me were amazing. For the most part. But maybe some weren't, but it's fine. So in the next few jobs that I've taken since then, comp was way lower in terms of what I was optimizing for, which is probably one of the reasons why I didn't take that PE job.
Yeah, it makes you had experience kind of optimizing on that, and it didn't work out for you. But if you had the per my last email, rate your job template in college,
you're so right.
You might be president of the United States at this point.
That's true. If only I had a decision matrix template.
Well, good news is that you do have access to the per my last email. Rate your job template. Again, it's in the show notes. It's completely free. Kayla cooked. Download it. Let us know what you think. Per my last email at morningbrew.com. Thank you all for listening. Let's roll the credits.
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogu.
Jack Stebbins is an associate franchise content producer.
And our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Go rate your job, y'all.